Okay, guys, we're going to get started. If you could take a seat, please, in the back. Thank you. Our next speaker is from Circle. I'm sure you get, who doesn't know Circle? Exactly, everyone knows Circle. It's a really interesting topic, which is the tokenization of everything by Claire Wells, head of Legal Europe. So Claire, without further ado, thank you. Looking forward to this, actually. Looks very nice. Give her a hand, please.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Great to be here. So my name's Claire Wells. I head up legal for Europe Circle. And today I want to talk to you about the blockchain-based future and the tokenization of everything. So following on from Z's talk about the financial expansion that blockchain brings, I want to take it up at an even further level and talk about the tokenization of everything. So first off, I'll tell you a little bit about Circle. We were started back in 2013 by founders Jeremy Allaire and Sean Neville, with a view to change how people create and share value. We're backed by 250 million investment to date, and we've got some pretty big hitters in there, including most recently Bitmain, Goldman Sachs, IDG Capital, list goes on. So, Jeremy and Sean had a vision. We wanted to recreate how people exchange and share value. And so what does that mean? We're basically a crypto finance company that makes it possible for people to send money or crypto assets anywhere in the world, free, instant, and globally. So with that in mind, we created 4 main products. First, Circle Invest, which allows you to buy and sell cryptocurrencies and hold them as an investment product. That's currently only available in the US, but it's coming to Europe very soon. Second product is Circle Pay, which I'm sure you guys all know about. It allows you to send money like a text anywhere in the world, free and instantly, person to person, and that's fiat denominated. The third product that we have is Circle Trade, which is one of the largest OTC trading desks in the world. We trade about 2 billion a month. And finally, we recently acquired Poloniex, which is a crypto-to-crypto exchange. So before I go into the tokenization of everything, let's talk some crypto basics. So in my mind, the internet is essentially about to change how, in my mind, with the advent of blockchain, we're about to change how the internet works. So DLT, or blockchain technology, will essentially form a fundamental new layer of the internet's infrastructure. So the public blockchain will provide open, global, immutable, and incorruptible means of that means that you can share value anywhere. So Web 1.0, Web 2.0 was essentially means of sharing data, media, and communication. In my mind, crypto represents Web 3.0, which will change how we exchange value, governance, and trust. So it's a new technological economic synthesis. We've got economic incentives, protocols, and network schemes all working together on a global platform. And that's pretty exciting, because that reinvents how we think about microeconomic units, what a company is, what value is, and how we share that. So the thing I wanted to stress is, with this technology, sure, we have the reinvention of fiduciary record-keeping industries, but that extends far beyond the financial services system. It goes way beyond that and touches pretty much every single system that shares value and readdresses and makes us rethink about what the fundamental thinking behind that is. So it changes finance. And I'm not just talking about bank accounts. I'm talking about the whole system of exchanging fiat and crypto value. It changes insurance. Insurance is based around people making bets on outcomes in society. How cool would it be if you can make a smart contract to enable that? It changes accounting. So auditing and record keeping. can all be stored on this immutable technology that's essentially global. It changes corporate and commercial law. So if we think about the traditional paper sort of contracts that I'm very familiar with, through smart contracts, through blockchain technology, we can reinvent what it actually means to contract with someone, to interact with someone on a legal basis. I also believe that the financial and record-keeping aspects of governance and voting can be changed leveraging tokenized assets. And finally, public record-keeping. So if we think about our healthcare records, if we think about our property records, our title to our houses and flats that we live in, these can all be stored in these global, open, immutable record-keeping systems, and it decentralizes and democratizes how those assets are stored and shared. So it puts the power back in the hands of the people and the owners of those assets, which I think is pretty exciting. I think it's incredibly important, I'll just pause there to take steps back and talk about what we're actually thinking about when it comes to crypto assets, because the industry is moving at great pace, and there are a lot of diverse taxonomies. But in my mind, we're dealing with three main buckets here, and I wanted to stress that these are buckets. That this is not like hard and fast lanes, and actually what you tend to see is certain tokens act in different ways over a certain period of time. But for the sake of clarity, for the sake of assisting with legal and regulatory thought on this, it's important to have some broad buckets of how we're thinking about things. And Global Digital Finance, or GDF, is a non-profit that Circle's doing a lot of work with, along with other large institutions, regulatory organizations, and the industry as a whole, to help come up with a taxonomy that helps denote what it is we're actually talking about here when we talk about crypto assets or tokens, and also a code of conduct in relation to that. So how do the key players in the industry operate, and how should they do so in order to do two things? One, protect consumers, and two, to ensure that innovation can continue. So that being said, three main buckets for me. One, cryptocurrencies. Two, crypto commodities. And three, crypto securities. So let's go into those a bit further. What do I mean by cryptocurrency? Cryptocurrency is essentially a means of storing or exchanging value. It's a method of payment. So I'm thinking here about Bitcoin in sort of the first founding father, as it were, of currency. And I think underneath that bucket, you have sort of three other layers. So those who express, or the tokens that express themselves with a privacy focus, others which have a more settlement-focused design, and finally, stablecoins. So I'm going to touch on stablecoins in a bit more detail later on, but I think stablecoins are really, really exciting at the moment and have the capacity to completely change how we think about tokens and how we think about the share of value. For those of you who don't know what stablecoins are, they're essentially fiat-backed one-for-one. So Circle just announced the launch of their USDC coin, which I'll go into in a bit more detail. So that's cryptocurrencies. Crypto commodities. So what I mean by crypto commodities is basically an asset that as a token, allows you to consume or utilize some of the infrastructure or resource of an application. So Ethereum's a great example of this. Ethereum's incredibly ambitious and represents the world's most powerful new computing infrastructure. So in my mind, this is a bit like a new sort of operating system for the global economy. Crypto securities is the last bucket I wanted to talk about, and a hot topic at the moment. So in my mind, crypto securities are essentially a new form of utilizing. They're a new form of security, but it goes way beyond your traditional sort of equity and bonds. and has fascinating capabilities way beyond those sort of traditional paper-based forms. And I feel at the moment some of them do merge the sort of utility and financial value represented in other coins, but there is huge scope in this area to develop and pave the way for exciting new tokens in the industry. So, tokenization of everything. I feel we're just at the start of this journey, where every form of asset or value storage and every form of importing record-keeping means becomes a crypto token. So why is that important? We're talking about representing financial tokens, so fiat currencies, equities, bonds, loans, other debt instruments, and insurance contracts in the form of a token that you can exchange globally anywhere. The same is true for property tokens. So as I mentioned previously, your land registry records, or your art. We recently saw the Andy Warhol being auctioned off for crypto assets, which I think is a pretty exciting step. But I also think that there is scope with this technology for an individual in the UK to parcel up a portion of their land, securitize it, send it securely, quickly, and pretty much instantly across the world on a liquid market to be bought by somebody in Japan, and who can share in the value of that underlying asset, which is a pretty groundbreaking thing. And then finally, decision tokens. So I don't think we're long off actually having individuals in a society having a token and saying, this is what I want to put my vote towards, this is what I want to support, whether it be in government, whether it be in control or ownership of a company. It's pretty groundbreaking stuff. That said, we're not quite there yet. So what do we need to get there and realize this vision? I think, in my mind, that falls into four key things. So one is a more mature and scalable public blockchain. I readily recognize that that's very much needed, and the infrastructure is in its infancy. Number two is a fiat-backed stablecoin. And I'll talk a bit more about why this is important in a minute. But I think in order to gain stability in the market, avoid volatility, this is going to be a game changer and very key. Number three is a mature token marketplace. So at the moment, I feel the exchanges that we see on the market at the moment are the sort of alpha version, as it were. And actually, because it's essentially trading crypto assets in a speculative form. Whereas over time, in my mind, what we're going to see is all kinds of tokenized assets exchanged on that platform. So if you wanted to list your ICO on a platform, it will be done there. If you wanted to list your property, it will be done there, and you can exchange value via these exchange mechanisms. And finally, an area that I'm very passionate about is the legal and regulatory clarity around this space, because I think we all recognize that, or at Circle we certainly feel very strongly about this, that there is a need to work with the incumbents and with the regulators to ensure that we are providing services that protect consumers, but that remain innovative. And actually, it's very hard to operate in a space that doesn't have legal and regulatory clarity. And I think we're on the cusp of getting there. We're seeing a lot of initiatives coming out of the European Parliament and Commission, like the Blockchain Observatory Group, and more locally, the FCA, I think, is going to come up with some good and important guidelines for us in the near future. So I'm excited about that. moving on, so why I think the importance of fiat stablecoin is very key for this tokenization of everything to flourish. And the reason is that in order for this ecosystem to be adopted en masse by a global society, we need some stability, clues in the name. So we need to ensure that we have an asset that is backed one-for-one with traditional fiat currency that is issued by your government central bank, can ensure that when value is exchanged, people have appropriate knowledge and recourse to what value they're actually going to have. Over time, sure, we might have a cryptocurrency that is not government issued that does provide a sort of acceptable price stable means of exchange, but at the moment we're not quite there yet. Which is why Circle has created USDC, or USD coin, which is backed one-for-one, so one token with one USD. And we feel that this is a pretty significant shift in the industry. Why tokenization of everything? I feel very strongly, and we feel at Circle, that this is going to be a game changer for society. It puts the power back in the hands of the people and democratizes how people interact and exchange value, not only in terms of fiat funds, but also in crypto assets. And it provides a way that, or provides a means of exchange that is essentially secure, incorruptible, and means that you don't have to have a centralized record-keeping system. What else does it mean? It also means that leveraging this technology, we can automate without having to be prone to human error and corruption. We can share value with new avenues globally between people to people, people to businesses, and I guess society as a whole. And there's great transparency with that. So you have essentially a technology that facilitates accountability, social and economic activity. And finally, I think what's really exciting about this phenomenon is it's global. It's not localized. And that's kind of why it's hard to regulate, right? Because it's a global movement. But it's not easy to regulate a revolution, so I appreciate that. But I feel that, yeah, the global aspect is an incredibly exciting one. Thanks. Any questions?
Go for it.
Yes? USDC. So there are lots of similarities. So the question was, how is USDC different to Tether? And I have to, I'll tell you how USDC is going to function. It's going to be audited by one of the big four. It's going to be backed one-for-one. So we're going to have a bank account that essentially houses the USDC or USD, and have an open source protocol that means you can essentially mint and burn the USD. So Tether is similar and has laid the groundwork for that, which I think is great. But I know there's some speculation as to how much it is backed, or whether there are other assets that back it as well, which is also a great model. But that would be my main distinction.
Hi, Claire. Thank you for giving your talk. I'm Bazola. I'm with marketerpedia.com. And my questions focus on regulation. So from your experience, which countries do you see being more, amenable to regulation, specifically? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So I think I'm really excited about where the UK is going to go. I think I won't mention the B word. Well, actually, I will. Brexit could cause many problems for financial companies or fintechs like ourselves, but it could also pose a real opportunity in that I think the governmental bodies recognize that they need to potentially create a hub for people to innovate in this space. So I have a really good feeling that there will actually be, that the UK can be trailblazers. And the FCA already is, right? The FCA, I think, is recognized around the globe as like one of the best in class, if not the leading regulator when it comes to financial services. So I think the UK is going to be fantastic. I think what's quite interesting is we're seeing a lot of, this is a bit political, but I think we're seeing a degree of regulatory arbitrage. So because there's a slightly fractured approach in Europe in relation to this industry, you have Germany treating it very differently to France, treating it very differently to the UK, and Malta and Gibraltar have popped up as well with their own notions. So that makes it quite a difficult landscape to navigate, but it's much easier and better than the US, I feel. I think FINMA in Switzerland is doing some really interesting things and has helped the industry with its clear guidelines as to how it sort of breaks down the sort of taxonomy in association with assets. And that's what the industry needs. It does need some sort of clear guidelines of, yes, this is where we anticipate the services that you're providing and the assets that you deal with being regulated, or no, actually, this is outside of our scope. So in answer to your question, I think the UK is going to be fantastic, and I've got high hopes.
One, two, three. Okay. I have a question. How do you propose to address security? Because, of course, talking about decentralized system is great and potentially allows the system to function against the odds, shall I say, or against authorities or people who want to destroy it. Equally, when you have a problem, how do you think we can address it? Because, for example, I'm a privy of 2 cases of 2 car manufacturers, and it's not Tesla, that had driven their owners up the motorway about 200 miles an hour for an extended period of time. It didn't stop. The owners are very anxious, and so are the manufacturers, because they actually don't know what happened. And we know what happened when you lose your photographs on Facebook, and you know that's how difficult it is to get them back. So I would like to hear your opinion how, in a decentralized system where we are grappling with a lot of things, including privacy laws. By the way, I have asked every large company I deal with to tell me what data they have. I won't tell you which companies they are. None of them has been able to come up with anything.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think so. Security is a great question, and it's something that Circle is doing a lot of work to think around. Not least because actually, in some instances, we will have like custody over assets, and will want to deliver the best service possible to customers. But going to your point on decentralization and how one can guarantee security on that, I think that's why what we will probably see is decentralized networks, but there will still be a need for centralized exchanges like Circle. So you will need to, I feel that there needs to be the sort of custodial companies that actually help monitor infrastructure, help ensure that hacking doesn't occur, and that technology is innovating in a sort of centralized way to ensure that the customers are protected, and you have a central point of recourse to say, hey, I sort of paid so-and-so $5 last week using USDC and it didn't settle. Why was that? And then you can talk about, then you have a sort of a company that can actually help you through that. So the question is, how is that different from the Federal Reserve? Yeah, great question. So this, I foresee central banks adopting adopting blockchain technology to help facilitate the transferring of fiat. So we know that the Bank of England is rethinking about how the RTGS system works, so that's real-time gross settlement system, is working at the moment. And DLT is definitely in the running in terms of how that's going to be restructured. But I think there is a need at the moment, because that's not going to be live until 2020, to work with sort of legacy systems in parallel with this new technology, but ensure that the system that they do come up with is technology agnostic, so that actually you can implement and innovate on it and you're not locked in the past. Yeah.
Hiya.
Hi.
How do you see stable coins backed by fiat, such as the USD, versus stable coins backed by, let's say, gold,
Yeah.
which in hard times especially is considered itself a stable asset versus regularly fiat? Do you think at some point there will be the emergence of one over the other, or do you think there'll always be, like, space for both in the crypto space?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. My hope is that we can move beyond the confines of fiat or gold and actually have a price-stable cryptocurrency that is a sort of global currency, as it were, that transcends cultural borders. I don't think we're quite there yet, which is why we have this sort of interim step of having a stable coin that's backed by fiat. But yeah, over time, I'd love there to be a sort of global currency. Hi.
Hi. There has been a big growth within sort of this year and last year with decentralized exchanges that have no stakeholders, no ownership. They're just a program running on a protocol that anybody can use at any time with any amounts and no restrictions. Is Circle going to be in the space alongside those or competing directly against them?
Great question. So I think some of the work that decentralized exchanges are doing is really interesting, and they've moved the dial in terms of the pace at which they can execute on new products, the pace at which they can provide services to customers. But I feel the issue they're going to have is regulation, because a lot of them don't actually engage with local regulators, right? Because there's no centralized. Well, I mean, you're always going to have a location of a server. You're always going to have individuals controlling. You're always going to have location of nodes. You're always going to have locations of individuals working out what the infrastructure and the technology is going to be in the next year, and what assets they're going to list, if anything. So I feel that whilst decentralized exchanges are doing some good and interesting things, actually over time what we're going to see is centralized exchanges, and I mean centralized in loose forms like Circle winning out, because we are actively, well, from our conception, we've always worked with regulators and within the bounds of law, because that's good for consumers, right? Which is essentially, all of our products are created with a consumer focus in order to protect and to ensure that they have the right recourse in a centralized body that they can say, yeah. So, yeah. So the question was: is that premise based on Is that premise based on the ability to shut down decentralized exchanges? And my answer would be no. Consumers are going to vote with their feet. If you get the best consumer product on a centralized exchange, which effectively you will, then people will trade there.
Hi, Claire.
Hi.
I have, thank you for some very interesting insights there. In all of those things, there's a lot of risk for the end user and for the distributor. Do you know of, or can you envisage insurance companies getting in there to offer to take up some of that risk?
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually would say there's no more risk than we're currently seeing in legacy systems and legacy means of exchanging value. But there is that reticence from the incumbents, i.e. banks and insurance companies, to get involved in this space. And I understand that, right? It's still relatively small and relatively infant in its stage of growth. And so I think also we need regulatory clarity, right? Because if they start operating in a space that is then tightened or not allowed to innovate in a fashion, if they're not, if regulation becomes stifles innovation, then that's going to be an issue. But in answer to your question, yes, there are insurance companies getting involved in this, and who are sort of readily interested. So yes.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Right here. So Circle acquires Poloniex, and obviously there was some, I would suggest, some form of bad practice with the community, and Poloniex went from the #1 exchange to like nowhere to be seen. How do you justify buying Poloniex, and what is your plan for Poloniex? And obviously that bad reputation that has been tarnished and is, as the community or anyone that was trading on Poloniex knew that there was obviously not they just weren't supporting their customers, or there was zero support, plus there was some bad practice that I felt was, and I'm sure the community will agree with me, when it came to trading. I don't want to go as far as to say some things that were illegal, but pretty much so. Yeah, there you have it. So what's your position on that?
Yeah, so we bought Poloniex to clean it up. They were understaffed and they didn't have the resources to, put into effect appropriate KYC to ensure that customers were getting the right experience and their tickets were being responded to at the right time. That and also to innovate within this brand. I feel Poloniex for us is a really exciting opportunity to become that exchange that facilitates the tokenization of everything. So, as I mentioned previously, I feel exchanges that the large exchanges that we see in their current form are going to morph and change into a far more diverse offering in terms of what tokens they list and what actual underlying assets are being exchanged here.
All right, so this was the last question. And Claire, if you want to finish up on some conclusion of your choice as to the tokenization of everything, where it's going, yeah?
I missed that, sorry.
Yeah, just you can conclude if you like. We just don't have any more time for questions, that's all.
Great.
Cheers.
Thanks so much.